I now have the great opportunity to introduce our next guest, Dr. Houston Davis, our Vice Chancellor at the University System of Georgia. He is an incredible partner. Not only does he represent the best chancellor in this great state, and the nation, I would say, and the wonderful University System of Georgia team, but he's our partner on a daily basis. When we talk about the articulation agreements that we have worked on in the past 5 years, we think about Josephine and we think about Houston Davis. We think about Matt and we think about Houston Davis. When we think about the 2+2s that we do from college to college, we think about our technical education group. We think about our college curriculum group, and we think about Houston Davis. When we have a question, and you don't know this, Houston, but I'm just going to go ahead and tell you. I asked the Chancellor a question last week. Chancellor, what do you think about this idea? He said, I think that's a great idea. Have you talked to Houston Davis? And I said, okay, note to self, I need to call Houston. And so I was with Steve, and I said, Dr. Wrigley, I've got an idea, same idea. What do you think about this? He said, I think it's a fabulous idea. You need to talk to Houston Davis. So the chancellor and the vice chancellor, what they say is Houston Davis is the guy that gets it done at the University System of Georgia, and I absolutely agree. We are proud that you are here with us today, and we look forward to hearing from you today. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Houston Davis.
Thank you, Commissioner. I tell you, you just put me in fear for all of us if you're looking to me. We're in trouble from the start. Now, I took notice of the fact that I was given the podium a few minutes early. That did not mean that I could throw in another 10 or 11 slides and take advantage of that. I'm going to do my best. We've run ahead of schedule, and I'm going to do my best to keep us there. It really is a delight to be here, but let me tell you, the Chancellor was very disappointed about not being able to be here. Chancellor Huckabee sends his regards. I'm going to mention an organization in the middle of some of my comments that I'm going to share with you called the National Association of System Heads, known as NASH. It's an entity that we partner quite a bit with, our colleagues around the country. And he is actually on their executive committee, and they're away at their annual gathering and planning, and I'm betting that he's going to come back with 2 or 3 more tasks to throw onto the wagon. He always comes up with new partnership ideas after that. The other thing to do, Chancellor and I talked a little bit in advance of this. We knew that the theme was partnerships, and there's a tremendous amount that's going on between our two systems, but we're not satisfied. There's much work left to do. So I've got 2 halves to what I want to talk to you about today. First of all is to reflect a little bit upon some of the things that the state of Georgia, not the University System of Georgia, not the Technical College System of Georgia, but together we are developing a reputation as a state, as a leader among our peers nationally. And each of those 4, 5, or 6 things would not be possible were it not for our sharing back and forth of good ideas and lessons learned. And then the back half, the second portion, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about some of the things that are on our minds, some of the initiatives that we're beginning to gather up, 2, 3, 4, sometimes a dozen or so institutions, and we're hoping to be able to match that with technical college system peers because we think that we've got some opportunities on the horizon that can really make a difference for the citizens of Georgia. Now, I cannot start any conversation without starting with Complete College Georgia. I was at a gathering, our teaching and learning conference last week. I told all the faculty in attendance, you're at a Complete College Georgia meeting. I was with our human resources directors about 4 months ago, and I said, tricked you, you're at a Complete College Georgia meeting. Nothing that we do falls outside of Complete College Georgia. In some ways, it's about not only what are we doing to better serve students, but it's about the research framework, it's about the economic development, it's about bettering the quality of all Georgians' lives. And in some ways, today I want to give you a little bit of, here are some of the things that we're talking about as we firm up that agenda. We know that as we work with our board and with our presidents and with our publics, keeping things pretty simple, one easy way to talk about what we're doing under CCG, though, is that metric of looking at how we're doing against the goals of degrees produced. And I know I got to meet Dr. Rule a few minutes ago. Look forward to being able to work with him on data sets. I'm kind of policy wonkish. Love getting my hands dirty in the data. I know that you guys think about the world this way, too. Here we are as of last fall. I'll hold my breath and hope that our 2016 number is still going a little bit against. But here you can see that it's a mountain to climb. As we started trying to distill down what that completion agenda meant to our schools, we talked about at the beginning of this journey as we set out along with you, we were producing about 52,000 degrees, but we knew as we got to the end of that road in 2025, that number needed to increase to about 80,000. So certainly quite a bit for us to be proud of in the early years, but much work left to do. I was comforted that the governor made it clear that you guys are responsible for all 250,000 of that gain. I'm going to go ahead and tell the chancellor that this is icing on the cake. We'll declare victory and go on. But by all means, we know that the work going forward is not going to be about low-hanging fruit. I like to talk with some of our team members about in higher education, we cook with crock pots, not with microwaves. A lot of the things that we need to be committed to are going to take time to develop. Some of those items that we as a state are beginning to be known for, some of those meaningful initiatives that might not be the sexiest things in the world to talk about, but they're making the biggest difference in terms of being able to truly create a reformed path for our citizens to be able to pursue a post-secondary certificate, associate degree, or bachelor's degree are made up on these various groupings of initiatives. And for those of you, especially that are in the academic, in the student affairs, and the policy side of things, I'm going to probably make your heart sing, talking about analytics and math pathways and 15 to finish learning support and guided pathways. For those of you that are not on that side of the house, I may put you to sleep, grab your Coca-Colas, they'll tide you over for about 20 minutes or so. But these are the meaningful things that we're doing, that it's not about an easy, quick fix. It's about being committed to transformational leadership inside of our system. One place where we absolutely partner directly with you is on an overall project called Guided Pathways to Success. The state of Georgia, states of Tennessee and Indiana have really been singled out for our commitment to some of those core principles of thinking about different paths, thinking about more flexible, structured degrees and supports for students as they move down that path. By all means, we have three things that make up the USG, and I know these are sister projects for the works that you're doing in the technical college system. One thing is 15 to finish. Students really making certain that if they're going to finish a one-year degree or a one-year certificate in 1 year or a two-year degree in 2 years or a four-year degree in 4 years, by all means, they need to be able to be full-time. And I'll show you here in a second, one of the early indicators, we're looking to get the 2016 number, that we're starting to turn this battleship around very slowly. Co-requisite remediation, something, and learning support, something that we know and we look over your shoulders onto your notes on a daily basis about what you're learning about the opportunities with co-requisite, thinking about offering the learning support in tandem with the for credit courses in the reading and the writing and the mathematics. And then obviously the guided pathways to success. You know, if you're going to take 15, you got to take the right 15, or whatever that number is for the certificate or the degree program that the individual may be engaged with at that time. The 15 to Finish Collaborative, I'll just speak to the USG. We are to the point where we're starting to see that as really being at scale, both in terms of a concept and in terms of a reality. We've had some institutions like Augusta University, University of North Georgia, especially through their Gainesville campus, see incredible increases in terms of both the number of students attempting 15 hours and earning 15 hours within a term. This particular slide just shows some of that credit intensity, and my apologies to those of you in the back of the room. This is those students that in 2012 in yellow, and then 2014, we looked at 2 years out, and we're going to take another 2-year snapshot here in a few months, that we're taking less than 12 see if I can see it, 12 to 14 and then 15 or more hours. We can see as a system that that's beginning to turn. And again, much greater degrees of intensity depending upon institution. Those learning support reforms that I mentioned, that again, you have been a partner, and some of these institutions like Albany State University, Bainbridge, College of Coastal Georgia, Georgia Highlands, Gordon State, that have really been our vanguard institutions on this particular initiative. I know that they have benefited tremendously from the dialogue between our two systems. Those 5 institutions really thinking about how do you build that co-requisite English, how do you build that co-requisite math seamlessly into that structure where an individual can again pursue that associate degree or that bachelor's degree sequence on time. We know that this is still, it's almost mind-boggling to see that all of the complete College America research was right. Those 5 institutions, when we looked at their way of serving students before this co-requisite challenge, only 21% of students that came to those 5 USG institutions completed the learning support requirement and earned their gateway course credit. Through this co-requisite model, we see that's gone up to 65%. Across that year worth of experience. We have basically, and the board took action 3 meetings ago to make the, to make the co-requisite strategy the default strategy for learning support inside of the USG for our institutions that are to continue to have learning support. We know this works. We know that it can save students significant time and significant money toward their overall degrees. And then the Guided Pathways to Success, the third piece of that 3-state initiative, really making certain that students are taking the right 15 credits. And again, we cannot do this work without the partnerships with TCSG institutions and what we're learning from our counterparts in Indiana and Tennessee as well. But by all means, something you're very familiar with, mapping out program sequences, mapping out those curricular and co-curricular requirements, making certain that you have structured schedules so that students can meet those pre-established schedules. It's almost a compact that you're making. If they do their part, you're going to do your part to make that happen. These 8 Vanguard institutions have stepped up and are leading the way on this, and certainly our Guided Pathways to Success initiative is showing great signs. Another piece that you hear us talk quite a bit about, and I know that several of your institutions are talking in this space as well, is predictive analytics. These are our institutions inside of USG that, not to say that they're the only institutions that are working in this space, but that they have stepped forward and become a part of a formal student success collaborative. And sort of with the theme of looking forward, things where we want to find ways to partner more and more, this is certainly a space where we want to do that. We want to find ways that USG and TCSG, because as you'll see, we've got research universities in this list, we've got regional universities, and we've got state colleges. This is not just about, sometimes folks will hear about the work that Georgia State University is doing that is a national, if not an international, model around this space, and that can seem a little intimidating. But what we try and say is that some of the things that Valdosta, for example, is doing, not in the EAB space, but with an Oracle partnership, just as meaningful for that institution and the partnership institutions that work with them. So as we look forward, and this is where I was going to mention NASH, National Association of System Heads has identified in the first the guided pathways utilizing predictive analytics. The states of Tennessee and Georgia have both agreed to step forward. We'll be going to a meeting here in a couple of weeks in Dallas. Several other systems will be joining us to start sharing what we've learned about doing these projects at scale. Again, what we want to do is make certain that we're partnering within the state of Georgia with you, our sister system, but we're also partnering with other systems nationally. The second area, I mentioned redesigning math pathways. Another thing that I know within your system you've been active, especially as we've rethought learning support together. It's been about rethinking what math might students need to be prepared for to make certain that you have them on the correct math that's needed for their overall degree. And then a third area, and the first two have gold stars because those are places where Georgia will be very active in terms of leadership in the overall NASH NASH framework. The high impact practices for all students is a place where we have said that we're going to try and make certain to participate, whether that be 3 or 4 of our institutions or that be our entire body of institutions plus yours. We want to think about how we can bring to scale some of those high impact practices like undergraduate research, like intentionally building internships into any certificate or any degree program, like making certain that you're thinking about service learning opportunities for students so that they can apply not only within the discipline and the career they've chosen, but they've found ways to be able to integrate that into the communities that they live in. We think there's a tremendous amount of promise for those programs and those services. Now, everything I've mentioned to this point are things that, again, it's impossible to separate our conversations because as we work, as Matt and Josephine and Catherine and Robert and others that I talk with on a regular basis about the work that we're doing, we've done that together. We want to keep the same spirit and commitment to partnership as we're beginning to tackle some of these other initiatives. There's some things that fit around this space of its new learning models and new delivery platforms. A topic that I definitely want to leave with you today is Affordable Learning Georgia. More about that here in just a few moments. Some of the things that we're going to do with our E-Core and our E-Major development that has the potential to be able to partner up perhaps with multiple technical college institutions, the way that USG institutions are working. And then competency-based education, something that certainly is in everyone's speeches these days. A lot of people are talking about it, but very few have really solved that puzzle of how do you do true open entry, open exit, direct assessment, or course equivalency-based, competency-based degrees. But by all means, there's no reason that the state of Georgia can't step to the front of the line and be a leader in that nationally. Now, let me start with the fact that we don't have all of the answers, but we think we're beginning to attack what the questions need to be on a lot of these fronts. As we charged a group of individuals, really it's been 3+ years ago in our university system, to think about where we were in terms of distance education, they started a conversation that at the heart of it had talked about student success and quality of learning, and then what are the necessary ingredients that go into that. And in some ways, it was delivery systems, content, affordable resources, faculty expertise, student support, network, assessment, analytics, mobile, impact, identity management, new financial models, new delivery. There was a lot of conversation about that, but in some ways that group was looking at best practices now. We felt like that's not what we need to be doing. We need to step back and we need to have the courage to look in the mirror and take a good hard look at ourselves and say, where are we weak on those tools as we sit right now? And that was heading to 2014, 2015, 2016. But where do we think we might be by 2030? And some individuals in this room were a part of a conversation that we had across a year last year in which we really challenged everyone to imagine what might the threats, what might the opportunities be as we look out 14, 15, 16 years into the future for all of our education. We did that when we started with a small group. It eventually went to about 65 individuals that represented different constituencies in post-secondary in Georgia. There were faculty, there were staff, there were students, there were some administrators. But we thought, you know, why do we have to be limited by that? Why don't we open up a course, and it just happened to be called a multi-stakeholder open online collaboration. That's sort of a MOOC. We opened that up to not just be those 60 or 65 individuals, but by the end of this exercise, there were over 500 people inside of the state of Georgia that were active participants in this conversation to think about who we were as a post-secondary system. And again, not pat ourselves on the back, but think critically about what are those places where if we don't do this better in the next 5 to 10 years, we will not be that leading system of post-secondary education that we fancy ourselves to be now. Now, one thing we didn't do was ignore the fact that we could benefit from bringing in experts throughout this. In some ways, these 5 individuals, we had Susan Albertine from American Association of Colleges and Universities, Kevin Carey, who's really a thought leader from New America Foundation, Bill Whelan, the leader of Sachs Commission on Colleges, Christine Ziegler, who's an interesting perspective. She represents the American Association of University Professors, Georgia chapter, and then Martha Cantor, former Undersecretary of of Education, who's now at NYU. They were leaders of several, if you will, courses that these 500 plus individuals were enrolled with. But what we looked to do was to really think hard about where are the pressures to change going to come from as we look to the next 12, 13, 14, 15 years. And in some ways, what you see here is just a ranking. If you just wanted to look at it through the lens of services for students, if that's the side of the house that you might find yourself, either it's in direct or in support mechanisms to make that happen, we saw that things like radical changes to instruction at undergraduate lower division, financial aid challenges, and I know that we all live in that space. We live in that in 2016, forget 2030. Looking at the changes that will come to advising, the IT changes. In some ways, information technology is an integrated part, and information assurance is an integrated part to everything that we do in this day and time. But the changes that are going to come to admissions, registration, transcripts, library services, bookstores, and career services will be tremendous going forward. These were the top 10 pressures for change on that side. And on the right side, if you just wanted to look through the lens of what about just in the classroom, whether it be the teaching and learning, the support infrastructure that surrounds the learning environment, where are those greatest pressure points going to be? And again, these were the ones as we worked through the opinions of those groups and worked through the expertise. Certainly great challenges in terms of reshaping what it means to instruct. Certainly the idea of tenure and advancement, the whole personnel perspective, certainly great challenges in terms of the changing role in an open content world, in terms of textbook and instructional materials, and then on down the line, research advising, employment grants, and service. Areas of the institutions that we know are going to certainly face great change. That led to an overall message from that group that was looking to 2030. And this really wasn't just about Georgia from a post-secondary standpoint. It was making observations about where we were as a country as it applies to post-secondary. There were some things that this group felt like that we must do, and we went from the 500 back down to the 65 or so that was sort of the parent group to make sense of that year's worth of conversation. And these were the 6 areas that they said we really have got to do something, and we've got to do something with great urgency and intentionality if we are going to be a high-performing system in the future. The first observation, and this wasn't a criticism of decisions in the last 15 years, but it was where we've ended up as after 15 some odd years. In some ways, Tennessee and Oklahoma did this as well, so I'm going to go ahead and put it to the other 47 states. I think all 50 states were guilty of. We allowed online education to just kind of bubble up and plant where it could, and it grew where it could. And in some ways, we have a very decentralized approach. The observation was made, if we do the same thing around competency-based models, if we do the same thing about taking advantage of the next generation of learning management systems, if we try and continue doing things every tub on its own bottom with the world in which there's going to be coaching and incredible supports for students in an online environment that's very difficult for even the wealthiest institutions to be able to put forward, we're going to miss the boat. So the idea of being able to think from the start as we look into some of these models about centralizing administrative functions. Notice I didn't say centralizing instructional, and I didn't say necessarily centralizing student support. But there's no reason that a lot of the techno-structure and a lot of the human capital that goes into that techno-structure, we can't think about utilizing those administrative dollars in a wiser way. And I'll tell you a little bit about how we propose to do that in USG. Alignment of that infrastructure for competency-based. We know as we look to the future, new tuition pricing and financial aid models, those of you that are CBOs here in the room, we're going to have to be in very active conversations with our fiscal office at the system level, but with our CBOs as well, about looking at subscription models. There are going to be all sorts of things where in some ways in a competency-based environment, just like you pay one price for your cable or satellite each month, you can watch 2 of your favorite TV shows, or you can watch it 24/7. Either way, you pay the same price. More and more, we're seeing those subscription-based models out there. It's a challenge to our assumptions about Carnegie units and seat time. Affordable learning tools. That group really challenged us that if we thought that we had already made a commitment to open educational resources on affordable learning in Georgia, we needed to think again. It was a pittance compared to what the down payment needs to be on that for the future. And I do want to tell you about ALG here in just a second. Stackable credentials, we saw the importance when we heard from the Lilienfelters about thinking about stackable credentials, making certain that students do not lose credits, that they move seamlessly from credential to credential to credential in a way that is systematic. And then faculty development and supports. That group looked back, they said, if you think things have changed from 1998 to now in an online learning environment, what do you think it's going to be across the next 15, 16 years? So certainly, as we're looking forward, I put in parentheses, ecosystem innovations, these are things we want you to join us in. As we're thinking about the next generation, both availability and in terms of demanding what we need from our various vendors and providers on the SIS side of things. To what extent can we depend upon not just best in class now, but what we need 4 or 5 years from now to be thinking about starting at the speed of business, flexible, not quite as bound by. U.S. DOE and Sachs Commissional Colleges have clearly stated that as long as you can document learning outcomes, you can be in a direct assessment, you can be in a course equivalency model. There's plenty of space for growing. And as we look forward to learning management systems, thinking about things, we need to have tools that allow more individualized and tailored space for students to be able to pursue credentials at their pace. Adaptive pathways that allow individuals pre-baccalaureate certificates, post-baccalaureate certificates. A lot of that space that our two systems certainly share. We need to have learning management systems, and we need to insist upon that in terms of where we're going in the future. And then client relationship management. It's very clear as we peek over the shoulders of some of our peers around the country. We partner a lot with Texas and California, and New York, Minnesota, the Ohio system, loosely system. By all means, we see a commitment to client relationship management. There's a coaching strategy that seems to be emerging, that students are not on their own. You're thinking about high quality supports, and you're thinking about that full cycle of learner engagement. We're really challenging things like eCore to think about ways to view their world in which they're looking at embracing open educational resources. They're looking to pool resources in terms of faculty and instructional designs. We're looking for seamless enrollments. We've declared that those eCore courses are pushed out into all of our USG institutions' banners to where it's easier for students to be able to take those. They're already doing it. They were just going outside the fence and doing it as transient students. There's no reason that we shouldn't stay student-centered as we look to that future. eCore has seen incredible growth over just a couple of cycles. They've gone from roughly 3,400 enrollments in the 2 falls ago to knocking on the door of 10,000 students taking an eCore course last fall. We fully expect that that's going to grow upwards of 15,000, if not by this coming fall, certainly by the fall after that. I mentioned the ease of registration. The other thing that they've done is they've partnered up with Affordable Learning Georgia to take those eCore courses that, again, we're trying to make certain that the back office administrative is muted to where students don't have to pay as much of the actual cost on that. But we also want to have a no-cost textbook solution. There's no reason that those 26 courses can adopt OER strategies for all of the coursework and materials that are involved in it. We want to have a truth in lending. If we say it costs this much to take the course, that's how much it costs to take the course. And they have done 21 of 26 courses at this point. Now, Affordable Learning Georgia, if you don't remember anything else I say here today, this is the one thing. Affordable Learning Georgia is an initiative that we are committed to because we have not gotten to this point without the help of other colleagues. So by all means, we are committed to a Creative Commons licensing. This is a share and share alike as long as you are working within an educational space. Affordable Learning Georgia is built upon 20 years of incredible knowledge from Galileo in terms of how you get out and you aggressively negotiate rights for materials. You know how to do it across state lines and international lines, and you know how to make certain that it is student-centered, not institution-centered. We asked Galileo about 3 years ago, we need for you to help us solve the textbook dilemma. We can document that, at least in USG, you probably have a number in mind, that textbooks and materials at a minimum $1,200 average a year for our students. That may as well be $12,000, $120,000 a year for a lot of our students. They don't have any money left over when the day is done. We've got the goal to be able to make certain that in USG that we have identified an open educational resource solution for the top 100 courses taken by any student in the university system. It doesn't matter if it's the University of Georgia, Bainbridge State College, Clayton State University, or University of North Georgia. We know the courses that students are taking. We've already attacked the top 50, and we're well on our way to the top 100. eCore has adopted, and there's already an annualized impact of $3.7 million in savings that students taking eCore courses, and that's affecting the 22,000 enrollments in those courses. Faculty development grants have gone out, and this is where I want to see how can we partner between our systems, because we want you to join us in building upon. Maybe we can get to 150 courses if we compare our various rosters. But the faculty development grants after 19 months are already up to $12.9 million annualized textbook savings. I was at a meeting not too long ago, and by all means I salute them because they're pioneers, but Lumen Learning is a great project that involves 70 universities out on the West Coast. They've been working at this for about a decade, and they save students $6 million a year. All right? After 19 months, we're now to $16.6 million in documented savings, and that's for direct adoption of these resources and these courses. We don't even know what the indirect is. We're very serious about this, and it is a part of Galileo's mission for the next 20 years, is to imagine itself being a leader in this space. The other thing that we're looking to do is really start talking about all of these assets, not only of USG, but thinking about across state borders and within the state. It's really a virtual e-campus. There are tools that are available for our folks to use. We've got to stay laser focused on certificate, associate, and bachelor's degree development in these high demand career initiative areas that the governor's office certainly is leading. We know in the IT, the FinTech, health IT, which obviously we're having to partner tremendously with you guys on, cybersecurity, again, space where information assurance bridges a lot of what we're doing together, in business management. There's so much pent-up demand in the adult degree completion market for business degrees, but they don't want to stop their life and necessarily fit the mold that we have. We need to be able to be flexible. As we look to the future, it's not about creating new degrees, it's about identifying some high-quality options in the USG, and then we're asking those degree programs to go through a program enhancement process where they do a zero-based budget, they think critically about what they're really passing along in terms of cost to students, they think critically about how they're utilizing open educational resources, they think strategically about how they do prior learning assessment, they agree to these principles, and they'll become programs that we will advertise as a state, but not just to Georgians. These are absolutely assets that we think have a national play, and as we talk more with SUNY and our partners in Texas and others, there's no reason that we can't share some of this program development, instructional design together. This is a loose rollout. Again, all the degrees already exist, but we're going through a redesign, asking them to think about what they might do to come forward and put themselves forward as those E-majors. The other thing that we're doing is going back and thinking about competency-based education in a way that we as a state can harness our potential to work with the U.S. Department of Education and work with Sachs Commission on Colleges to bring them to the table, because we've got on your campuses and our campuses faculty that want to work in this space. They want to think about how they can come up with new models of delivery that border on being direct assessment. They want to find a way to save time and save money in terms of family overall ability to pay. A couple, Georgia State, Columbus State, Valdosta State are certainly some of our institutions that already have CBE strategies. eCore and E-major, we're expecting that, but the Competency-Based Education Network, we're one of only 2 states that's been accepted into this. Texas is the other one, and it's largely because of the University of Texas system. But by all means, we want to make certain that Georgia and Texas get first to the table to be able to affect these conversations in D.C. as well as our local needs. But it all comes back to what's all of that doing. Again, we know you've got your numbers and we've got our numbers that we're trying to hit. It is impossible for us to see any way to really start hitting that steep climb My grandfather always told me that compound interest is a beautiful thing, son. 3% year over year gets you where you need to be. We know that we're making great strides, and I know you're making great strides in the first 4 or 5 cycles of your commitment to Complete College Georgia, but it's going to think real heavy lifting, roll up your sleeves, put on your thinking cap sort of changes to what we do, and that's where the partnership space really becomes powerful. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to give you a little bit of a glimpse. For those of you that fell asleep, you can wake up now. I think I finished in time to at least beat the break by a couple of minutes. For those of you that are working in this space, I cannot be more serious. My mom and my daddy, they raised me to be a lot of things, but realistic is one. I am not the sharpest tool in the drawer. I know that. But lots of times you surround yourself, all right, with a lot of really talented, a lot of hardworking, a lot of thoughtful people, you can do some magical things. By all means, that's where the partnerships between USG and TCSG can make the biggest difference. And quite frankly, if you saw or heard anything today that any of you, presidents and academic officers and business officers and the like, would like to work with us, I know we'll be in contact with our counterparts at the system office about potential work. Thank you for all that you do, and thank you for what you do for Georgia citizens.